Alright, here we go. I'm going to talk about the MCAT today. All the little details, including how many questions there are in each section, what kind of things you need to study for in each section, and the timing of it all, and when you're doing the actual exam, how much time you should allocate per question, and figure out if the questions are really worth the answer or not, depending on what you know and what you studied for. So right here, I'm on the Kaplan website, right here, captest.com/mcat/what is the MCAT. So this page I found is pretty good in determining how the MCAT is laid out, and it gives a pretty nice overview. I'll link this down below in case you want to check it out for yourself. But I'm basically going to go through about what the MCAT is and what's it all about and how many sections there are and things like that. So the MCAT is the medical college's admissions test created by the AAMC. The AAMC is kind of the governing body of med schools and residents. They kind of oversee all the processes that occur when becoming a medical personnel, especially for physicians. And the MCAT was made by them in order to standardize the amount of knowledge that an undergraduate student gained in their undergraduate college and how that can be applied towards success in medical school. And I'll talk about which section is actually the most important. I'm not saying that every section is not important, but there's one section in particular that med schools really care about to see if you'll do well on your USMLE. So with that being said, the MCAT tests all of the basic sciences and a little bit more. As you can see here, they test general chemistry, organic chemistry, general biology, biochemistry, physics, psychology, and sociology. So this means that they test your chemistry, their biology, physics, as well as social sciences. Social sciences is actually pretty interesting because not many people might think about that when going into med school and designing their pre-med courses. But it is an important part of the MCAT, and it's important that you do well on this section because it really understands about the socioeconomic status when going into med school and things like that. So what are the MCAT sections? All of these subjects are broken down into four main sections: the Chemical and Physical Foundation section, the CARS section, Critical Analysis and Reading Skills, which is the reading section, the Biological and Biochemical Foundation section, so this is more of biology based, and finally the social science section, the psychology and sociology. Now, I did explain a little bit about the MCAT and how I studied for it. Please watch my previous video. That video explains how I got a 515 on the MCAT and little tips and tricks onto how I studied and what I used for studying. In this video, I'm going to go more into the structure of the MCAT. So as you can see here, they start off with the Chemical and Physical Foundation section. So this is a heavy chemistry and physics section. Chemistry, physics, and biochemistry, I would say. And as you can see on this first section, there's 44 passage questions, 15 standalone questions, for a total of 59 questions. You have 95 minutes to complete it, and the score is the same with all the sections, 118 to 132. 125 is the midpoint, so you want to get at least that or above. So these 44 passage-related questions. So how it works on the MCAT, and you'll know this if you take any practice exams. You get a passage with a bunch of information. In chemistry and physics, you might get like a scenario about someone doing something like work or heat energy output of a chemical reaction, things like that. And you'll get a pretty big passage, about 2 to 3 paragraphs. And you have to extract that information from that passage in order to answer the questions. You might get about 4 to 5 questions for each passage. And those passages can throw you a lot of curveballs because there's information in there that you actually don't need, but it's your job to pick out which information you need and apply it to the formulas that you know. A note is that you cannot bring anything into the exam, so you need to memorize all the formulas associated with chemistry and physics from your undergrad courses. And they do give you a periodic table. It is electronic. This whole exam's on the computer. So you have a little button on the bottom that says open the periodic table, and you have access to that. Other than that, you don't have any other access. You do not have a calculator. Now, because you don't have a calculator, the calculations aren't too bad. You definitely need to know how to work with exponents and how to round decimals in order to get an accurate answer. But in the Chemical and Physical Foundation section, I wouldn't say it's too bad where you're going to spend more than 3 minutes on an equation. If you spend more than that, you're probably doing something wrong, or you just don't know it and you need to move on. These 15 standalone questions are, in my opinion, the easier set of questions. They just have a little prompt and then a question associated with it. That's it. And those questions kind of really test your understanding of the foundational concepts of chemistry and physics. The passage questions kind of make you connect different topics together, but these standalone questions are a bit more straightforward and go deep into the foundations. And as I said, there's 95 minutes. So for about 60 questions, 59 here, but 95 minutes, you shouldn't really spend more than a minute and a half per question. Ideally, you want to spend less than a minute and 15 seconds per question. And so if you have any leftover questions at the end, you can go back to them and spend that a little extra time. And now the next section is the cars section. So this is the order that you're going to be taking the MCAT in. The cars section is the reading section. My opinion, the worst section. I hate reading, but when it comes to this exam, you have 53 passage-related questions. No standalone questions. Every cars section just has passages. So you get sometimes a short story, sometimes a little piece from an article or a biography, something like that. And you get 4 to 6 questions per passage for a total of 53 passage-related questions. You'll notice that there is some sort of pattern that goes on when they ask you the questions, and I can't really explain it, but the only way you'll realize this pattern is by taking a lot of practice exams. You'll realize that there's a sort of flavor and style that they ask questions in cars about, and so while you're reading the passage, sometimes you just pick up like, oh, I know they're going to ask a question about this, so then you remember it more easily, and then when the question actually comes, it's a pretty quick answer. Now, there's 9 passages in total in this cars section, so for 90 minutes, that's 10 minutes each passage. Try not to spend more time than 10 minutes. Some of them actually have less questions than others, so you might actually have leftover time for one of the passages, let's say 8 minutes, but some of them might have more, so you might spend 12 minutes, so it kind of averages out to 10 minutes. But you need to keep in mind, you don't really want to spend an average of more than 10 minutes per passage. For me, the cars was actually the most difficult in sort of keeping track of time, because time is the enemy here in cars. You need time to read the passage, and you need time to look at the questions. If you don't remember it, go back to the passage, figure out what you need, and then answer the cars questions. So I think this is the most difficult section for me, at least, because it was just about time management, figuring out how fast I need to read the passage, extract the information that was necessary, and answer the questions. Now, the next section is the bio section, the bio and biochem section, arguably my most favorite section because I'm probably the best at this section than the others. I did review my scores that I got on the MCAT. Please watch my Exposing My AMCAS video on my channel. That's a great video, and I explain going into detail the scores that I got and the breakdown of the scores. But in the biochem section, there's 44 passage-related questions, 15 standalone questions for a total of 59. So this is very similar to the chemistry section, chemistry and physics section. You still get 95 minutes here. And it's the same deal. But the thing in this section is there's a lot more data analysis and sort of research aspect to this, where they give you a sort of study or a comparison of studies, and you need to figure out how those relate to each other, all in the realm of biochemistry and biology, and answer questions, a lot of like prediction questions, like what will happen if this has changed and things like that. So really try to do well in analysis of data. A good way to prepare for this is just to read some research articles, some current research articles, figure out what's interesting to you, and then look at the data and try to go through what the author is saying and how the data relates to what their conclusions are saying. And that's a majority of the passage-related questions. And the standalone questions here are similar to the chemistry section, where it kind of tests your foundational biology and biochemistry knowledge. And you still have 95 minutes for this. So again, a minute and a half at most per question. Try to aim at a minute 15. Now, the biology section, I argue, is the most important section. I've read somewhere that this is the most key section that will determine how well you will do on your USMLE, especially step 1. So med schools want to see you excel in this section. They want to see you excel in all the sections, but this section might mean a make or break in determining if you'll get accepted or not, because this will determine how well you'll do on the USMLE. At the end of the day, that's the test that matters in order to determine if you're going to become a doctor or not. And that's what the medical education is kind of driving you towards, is to pass that exam. And I stressed this a lot in my last video as well, but you need to know the amino acids. Know their structures, know their polarities, their acidity or basicity or nonpolar, and know their abbreviations, all the way down to the one-letter abbreviations. It's the most important thing on this exam. There's a good amount of questions regarding that, so know that. And finally is the psychology and sociology section. And this is a section all about memorization, I would argue. There are passage-related questions and standalone questions similar to the other sections, but in this section, they usually have some sort of prompt similar to the car section. It kind of reminds me of the car section a lot. Well, you'll get a sort of like study going on or a story, and you have to pick out the information from that and determine what's the best definition or word that best describes what's going on here. So I argue this is a lot more memorization. Same thing, 59 questions, 95 minutes, so a minute and a half per question. And I am stressing this time management a lot because it's the enemy of this exam, the time. So that's the psych and soc section. It's all about memorization of those terms. There's a lot of definitions you need to go through, but they're kind of intuitive in a way because the word kind of describes the definition. But know those words, and especially the sociology aspect of it. In the psychology aspect, you'll get a good amount of information regarding neurons and how the brain works and things like that, but sociology might be a bit harder. And now, when you complete all this, what kind of score are you looking for, right? So here's a little breakdown. The scores range from, as you can see here, 472 to 528, with 500 in the middle. And these are the percentiles of what people fall into. And I would argue there is a statistic on the AAMC website of like the matriculated applicants and what their scores are and GPA are. And you really, if you are going for an MD school, try to get above a 511 to 512. If you're going for a DO school, try to get above about a 503 to 504. That will make you really competitive. As you can see, if you get about a 511, 512, you'll be around the top 25%. The other statistic in the AAMC is that only about 40% of applicants actually get into med school in any given application year. Meaning, you don't need to get this high of a score to get into med school. This is only top 25% of test takers. Some people with above scores in that don't get in. Some people below scores of that get in. So that means that this is only a part of your entire application. But that's not to say that the score is not important. It's a very big importance because it's only one of two metrics, number metrics, that go into your application, the other being your GPA. So that's what my recommendation is if you want to be in a competitive sort of range for the MCAT. And now, how long is the MCAT? So the MCAT is a very long exam. These are the breakdowns of everything, but in total, total content time is 6 hours, 15 minutes, but your total seated time is 7 hours, 33 minutes. What does that mean? Well, these tutorials and breaks are what they mean. The tutorial in the beginning is 10 minutes. My suggestion is take that time, don't skip it, and write down. They give you a little book with a pen, and just write down a bunch of equations that you know. It actually kind of saved me because I forgot an equation mid-test, but then I went back and I realized I wrote it in the beginning and was able to use that in order to answer a question. So I would suggest using that time to write down all the equations that you know. And then these are the breaks. The breaks are between every section. You get 10 minutes between chemistry, physics, and biology, 10 minutes between biology and psychology and sociology, but you get 30 minutes between cars and biology. This is your lunch break, so make sure you spend a good amount of time, make sure you eat, because it's definitely an endurance test. This exam and agreement, that's 8 minutes. That's just like going through the terms and conditions, basically. But each section is 95 minutes, except cars, which is 90 minutes. And then you get a void question, 5 minutes, and then a survey at the end, 5 minutes. So that survey is also optional. If you want, you can fill it out. You don't have to. But the amount of content that you get is 6 hours, 15 minutes. You'll probably be in the test center for closer to this time, 7.5 hours, even if you skip the breaks and the surveys and all that, just because of check-in time, check-out time, and transition times and all that. So when is the MCAT offered? It's offered 25 times a year. With the COVID situation, it was a little weird. I took it where they were trying to figure out the entire COVID situation and the MCAT. But the testing dates are open between January and September. So the earlier you can schedule, the better, because those go by pretty fast. Try to get a test center close to you. I know that's not always possible, but if it is far, then just make sure you take a test drive, figure out where everything is so you're not late. But this is an important thing, when to take the actual exam. A lot of people take it in their junior year if they're not going for a gap year. And if they take it in their junior year, it's usually if you graduate or you finish school in beginning of May, they might take an end of May or early June, because applications also open beginning of May and you're able to submit at end of May. So in regards to that, make sure you take the MCAT when you're ready. Make sure you take it after you take biochemistry and possibly genetics. Definitely after biochemistry and organic chemistry. And just take it when you're ready. Don't try to rush it. If you need more time, you need more time. Just push it back. It's okay. And if you are not taking it during the school year, then that's up to you. That's up to your plan. But I would still suggest doing it before applications are due and before applications even open, so that you're ready to go. You're ready to submit your application as soon as possible. So how much does it cost to take the MCAT? Over here it says it takes $310. And if you're applicable to take advantage of the free application assistance program that the AAMC offers, the AAMC offers a assistance program that if you fall under a certain annual income of your family, you can get access to a discounted MCAT. You get access to free AAMC prep material. And you get access to free submissions up to, I believe, 10 primary applications to 10 colleges. And you can get a lot of waivers for your secondary applications. So if you fall into that, don't be ashamed. Just take it. It saves a lot of money. And it really has no impact into how you'll get accepted into med school or not. And if you don't fall into that, it is a lot of money, but think of it as an investment into your future. This is a pretty competitive field to get into, and the money that you spend now will help you become successful in the future. So it is definitely an investment. So that's about it. That's everything you need to know about the MCAT. The MCAT is definitely an endurance exam, as I said, but I will leave this website down in the comments below if you want to take a look at it. And please visit the AAMC website for more information about how to schedule your exam. They have a whole handbook that will help you go through what you need to bring on your exam. You need an ID at least, and things like that. So with that being said, that's about it. Please like and subscribe to this channel. It would help me out greatly. And please do comment below if you think about any topics that I should talk about. Again, I'm Abhinav. I'm an incoming MS1, and I'll be in the MD PhD program. So let me know if you want me to talk about anything about that. And with that, have a nice day.